All right, so this is the lesson on how to find the percent of a number. That's when you're looking to find a percentage of a specific number. So to find a specific percentage of a specific number, you must change the percent to a decimal, which we already know how to do, and then you multiply that decimal with the number that you're trying to find the percentage of. So here's an example. I want to find 27% of 9. Now, I need to first of all, step 1, change the 27% to a decimal, and that is the first thing we're going to do. So, to change a percent to a decimal, if you remember, then all you have to do is divide by 100. Just like we've done already. So you put your decimal at the back of the number if it doesn't have one, we know that already. And you move your decimal 2 spots to the left to make it smaller. Just like powers of 10, we've done this lots of times. So that 27% becomes 0.27 or 27 hundredths. So once you've changed your percent to a decimal, you move on to step 2. Step 2 is where you take that decimal and you multiply it by whatever number it is that you're trying to find the percent of. So you take your 27%, it's now 0.27, and you times it with the 9, which is the number that you're working with originally from the question. So then you just do your regular old multiplication. So you've got 9 times 7, which is, of course, 81. That's wrong. Wrong. Ignore me, that's not right at all. 9 times 7 is 63. So you put your 3 and carry your 6. 9 times 2 is 18, plus the 6 that you carried is 24. Put your 4, carry your 2. 9 times 0 is, of course, 0. Plus the 2 that you carried is 2. Now you take a look, don't forget your decimal, right? So I've got 2 decimal spots in my question. I'm going to have 2 decimal spots in my answer. So my answer is 2.43 or 2 and 43 hundredths. So when you're working with questions like this, you often need to write them in a very specific way. So what I've done is, here's my question. 27% of 9. Step 1, change my percent to a decimal by dividing by 100. Step 2, multiply that decimal with the number that I was working with originally to get another number, 2 and 43 hundredths in this case. Therefore, these 3 little dots are a math symbol. So you can see there's 3 dots and they kind of make a triangle. That's a math symbol that means therefore. It means I've done the work and now here's my answer. Therefore, 27% of 9 equals 2 and 43 hundredths. So these questions that you're going to be working on, page 7, 8, and 9, they're a little bit more involved. They've got more than one step. You're going to need to do 2 steps. Changing your percent to a decimal and then doing a multiplication. And at the end, you put a little therefore, here's my answer. So it's almost like 3 steps. So let's do another example. In this example, I have 6% of 132. So I still need to do step 1, change my percent to a decimal by dividing by 100. So don't forget when you're working with percents, you put your decimal at the end and you move that decimal 2 spots over. If I have an empty spot, it gets a 0. So I end up with 0.06 or 6 hundredths. So here's my decimal, and then I take it over here and I multiply it with the number that I was working with. Now remember, when you're working with multiplication, it doesn't matter kind of where you put the numbers, top, bottom. You don't need to line up any place values or anything because you're multiplying. So 6 times 2 is 12, carrier 1. 6 times 3 is 18, plus the one that you carried is 19, carrier 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus the one that you carried. Now when we're moving to the zeros, you know that 0 times anything is 0. So these are all going to be zeros. And now you want your answer. So your 2, your 9, and your 7, and then all the rest are zeros. And you also need your decimal. I have 2 decimal spots in my question, so I'll have 2 decimal spots in my answer. And this actually worked out really well, because here is my final line, my answer line. Therefore, my 3 dots that make a triangle, 6% of 132 is 7 92/100. Let's do one more example. So here's my last example here. Well, too far. All right, so 110% of 24. Now that's a percent that's bigger than 100. That's okay. Steps are exactly the same. So I've got 110%, which I still need to turn into a decimal. So I'm still going to divide it by 100. So I'm going to take my decimal and move it 2 spots over. So now I have 1.10, or 1 1/10, or 10 hundredths. Now, do I need to keep the 0? I don't. I don't, because there's no other numbers that come after that. So I can actually get rid of it. Just make my life easier down the road. So I have 1 1/10. So I'm going to move over here. Now I did originally put my 0 in there, but remember, I don't need it. So I'm actually going to rewrite my question. Now remember, I don't have to line up place values because I'm multiplying. I only have to line up place values when I'm adding and subtracting. So 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 1 again is still 4. You're moving to the 2, so you put an X, and that way your answers are going to start under that column. So that's important, don't forget that when you're multiplying. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 1 is 2. You're going to add them up. 4 plus nothing is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6, and 2 plus nothing is 2. And I only have 1 decimal spot, so I'm only going to have 1 decimal spot. And then my therefore answer line. Don't forget your 3 dots, which of course, therefore, 110% of 24 is 26 4/10. Now, no matter what percent you're given, no matter what number you're dealing with, the steps are exactly the same. You take your percent, you change it to a decimal by dividing by 100. And then you take that decimal and you multiply it with the number that you're trying to find. And then you write your final answer with your therefore. If you have questions about this, of course, you know you can get in touch with me.